I'm going to answer a question in this video. I'm not going to mention who sent the video because they'd like to remain anonymous. The question reads, I wanted to ask about the images and icons of Jesus. If we don't worship these images but have them as divinations because either they were gifted to us or we had bought on our own, is this still sinful? What I mean to say is if we are not worshiping them, does this also go for the saints? Because as I am raised Orthodox Christian, we do have icons in our churches. We worship God and all is the same, but we have martyrs too that were later confirmed to saints. And because of their sufferings, and many have performed miracles that are known up to date. It's a lot to get into because I know that Christians don't agree with Catholics that have saints as well. But there are some questions. Is it bad to have a Jesus image even if we aren't worshiping that? Okay, so the word says do not set up an image, period. It says do not set up an image. So the image of Jesus, you do have a relationship with it. I mean, all of us have a relationship with it. And I wouldn't say that I was, I wasn't physically bowing down to pictures. I wasn't physically bowing down to a cross or any of the things that I previously had. But the example that I use is, for one, there was a picture of so-called Jesus in my living room. And I would also always glance over at that picture. I would, I'd be sitting maybe in my chair praying, talking with God, and I'd glance over that picture. I had a different relationship with that picture than I had with other pictures in my home. So you have relationships with pictures. I mean, if I'm looking at a picture, I have a massive picture of my grandson in my house. And when I look at that, I have a relationship with it. I'm not bowing down to it or anything like that, but if that were a picture of Jesus, I would be having a different kind of relationship with it. Obviously, I'm not worshiping my grandson. He's not representing a picture of my God. But to have a picture that is representing your God, you're going to have a relationship with it. There is most definitely a relationship with it in your heart. If you are having difficulty getting rid of it, you are already having a relationship with it in your heart. The cross, I had a cross that was had been given to me by my daughter and my son-in-law, and it was on my coffee table. Well, I have chairs on one side of the coffee table and chairs on the other side of the coffee table, or a sofa, and depending on where you're sitting, that cross might be upside down, and it would kind of irk me when it was upside down. I would feel weird about it, or if something was placed on top of it. I didn't want something to be placed on top of it. So you have a relationship with it. Just because you're not kneeling down physically and worshiping it in that way, the most important thing is what's going on in your heart with regard to that thing. What does it represent about you? My friend had given me a keychain, and it was, before we knew about all of this, and I've since thrown it away, of course, but he gave me a keychain, and it had like that fish that's supposed to represent a quote-unquote Jesus fish that's actually has pagan origins, go figure, and it said Jesus inside, and I had that on my keychain. These things are representing. The idol is what's in your heart. It's not the idol that's outside of you. It's what is this representing inside of you. So what I would say to this is the word is very clear on this point. We are to have no images, period. Now, whenever I'm talking about this, I always feel like it's important for me to mention that the picture that I have on the book is a picture of the multitude. It's a picture of God's people. That is not a picture that someone's not going to look at it and go, oh, I need to somehow worship this, or they're not going to have an internalized representation of worshiping it, because it's actually representing his people. It's not representing Christ. So that's a different thing. We wouldn't be worshiping his people. But this leads me to the next question. The next question has to do with so-called saints. The word does not set apart anyone as saint anything. What the word says is that all of God's people are saints. There's no greater saint than another saint. We're all referred to as saints. The Catholic Church has distorted that and manipulated that so that people are actually worshiping certain people that they claim to be more holy than others. Well, that is not what the word says. The word says there is no favoritism. We are all just doing our duty at the end of the day, and that God is the one who will exalt later. No one should be worshiping anyone, whether it's Mary, Peter, Paul, whoever, and no one was referred to as Saint so-and-so. That is false. It is incorrect. So what's happening when you have a little figurine of Mary, or you have a little figurine of so-called Paul or Peter or whatever? You start having a relationship with it. It is outright idolatry. Moreover, if anyone has performed a miracle, it's not that person who performed that miracle. God performed that miracle through that person for his cause and what he is doing. We are not supposed to be setting anybody up as an idol. Peter, Paul, the apostles were performing miracles. We don't set them up. They had a very important role in the body. You also have a role. Might not be the same role as the apostles or the witnesses, but you have your own role. And you should not feel comfortable with anyone going to you and setting you up as an idol. Nor do I feel comfortable with anyone coming to me and setting me up as an idol. I tell you that all the time. You need to go discern from God whether I'm from him, because at the end of the day, all I am is a shepherd to him. No one should be shepherding anyone to themselves. So I don't think that Paul or Peter would be pleased about this. In fact, I know that they wouldn't, because Paul addressed this in the Bible when people were trying to set him up as an idol, and they were saying, well, I follow Peter, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos. What did he say? He said, why are you saying these things? In fact, let's go ahead and read it. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10. I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly united in mind and thought. What is God's church supposed to be? Perfectly united in mind and thought. My brothers and sisters, some from Chloe's household have informed me that there are quarrels among you. What I mean is this. One of you says, I follow Paul. Another, I follow Apollos. Another, I follow Cephas. Still another, I follow Christ. My goodness, I didn't even realize that they were separating Christ out of this. I had never noticed that. Next thing he says is Christ divided? Now think about that. Christ said a divided kingdom will not stand, but his kingdom is going to be forever. This is his kingdom. Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? I thank God that I did not baptize any of you except Crispus and Gaius. So no one can say that you were baptized in my name. Yes, I also baptized the household of Stephanas. Beyond that, I don't remember if I baptized anyone else. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom and eloquence, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of his power. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. All right, so what is he saying here? There's no one that you are supposed to be lifting up but God. There are no saints that are exalted to this sainthood status. It's ridiculous and it's false. It is not biblically congruent. It is against the Bible. That is an attempt to idolize man. And that is exactly what the prostitutes do that bore out of the harlot Catholic Church. They exalt some pastor at a pulpit. That is exactly what the prostitutes did out of the Protestant Reformation. They exalted some person's spin on doctrine. Luther, Calvin, Knox, Wesley. That is not what I do with you. And I'll tell you that I sorted this through with God before he even had me doing what I'm doing right now, because I knew of the potential for people to do that. And he put it on my heart to sort this through with him and how I would handle it. Anytime that people have tried to put me up as an idol, I have corrected them. And that is what his shepherds do. So if any of those people who the Catholic Church or anyone else is setting up as saints, if any of them truly were shepherds of God, they would not be pleased at what people are doing, setting up figurines or separating them out and calling them saints. It is incorrect. I know that people who were raised this way, that this is a huge part of their just upbringing, of their repertoire, but it needs to come out of you. And what I encourage you to do is, first of all, I can share with you my testimony. I can share with you what I know in the Word, but you need to go back to God and you need to ask him, Lord, is this true? Is this wrong? And then you need to ask him to turn your heart. and to turn your heart to do what he requires of you. And I know he will. He will confirm it for you. Because I know as well that I know the person who's writing this, who's asking this question, I know that their heart is stronger for God than some statue or figurine. You know, what's really meaningful to me, and I cried about this a lot through Sabbath, thank goodness we're on mute, but I was just so touched by the testimonies of people who have thrown out these images, and images that were passed down in their family, pictures of so-called Jesus, crosses, things like that. One person even talking about this being their inheritance from their mother. That's really hard. Someone I know that I shared about who he had all kinds of figurines. He had been raised Catholic, so that's not surprising, but had all kinds of figurines and crosses and pictures, and some of which came from his grandmother. Another person sharing about something that came from her grandmother that she inherited. I had things that I threw out that had come from my children. And it was really hard to even tell my children that I was throwing those things out, but I needed to let them know, and I needed to be an example to them. And thankfully, my children love the Lord, and they understood. Even though it was difficult for us to conceive of throwing out a gift that was given in love. So you can't receive this from me. I mean, I can share with you, and God will either convict you either way, but please go back to the Lord and ask him if this is true, and ask him to turn your heart, and he will.